If I said to you that early this morning there was a, a light frost on the roses and the baboons were playing around the rocks and it was a temperature of just above 0 degrees at an altitude of 6,100 feet, you probably wouldn't think I was in Saudi Arabia, but such is the variety of landscapes in this amazing country that we've been travelling through for the last 4 weeks. Taif was a place where Philby spent 2 days, and I can see why. It's beautiful. After travelling at an altitude of about 3,500 feet for the last 10 days, yesterday afternoon as we entered Taif, we rocketed up to about 6,000 feet. Last night we slept at about 6,300 feet, and temperatures dropped accordingly. But it's a beautiful city. I think it's the 6th largest urban area in Saudi Arabia. About 700,000 people live here in Taif today, obviously much smaller when Philby arrived, and he arrived on Christmas Day 1917, and he said, right glad we were to see our goal before us after about 45 miles of strenuous travel and 11 hours in the saddle with but 2 short breaks. The sun was now low over the hills and we hastened down the slope and up the valley past little hamlets girt around by orchards and fields. You can probably hear the call to prayer behind me. It's Friday now, just after midday. So this is the main day of prayer here in Saudi Arabia. So I'm doing the podcast now whilst everywhere is closed. But Philby said there was little to arrest the attention of our weary eyes until we came to the great 4-storied marble palace of Shubra, the palace of Ali Pasha, ex-Grand Sharif and cousin of Hussein ibn Ali, king of the Hijaz, towering above its splendid orchards. I marvelled to see a building so exquisite, with the great steps leading to the front door and the delicate window shutters of fretwork in Arabia, and my companions, most of whom had never been out of the desert, stood amazed at such magnificence. This palace stands about 1 mile to the north of the town on the highway, which at this point runs through a ragged avenue of mulberry trees. Well, today Shubra Palace is right in the heart of the bustling modern metropolis of Taif, and it was the first place that we visited yesterday because Philby described it so beautifully, and he describes it very, very well. It is the most remarkable of buildings, very well restored and protected by the Heritage Commission here in Saudi Arabia under the Ministry of Culture. And whilst we weren't allowed inside just due to safety reasons, really, a lot of the floors are not in the best of states, but there are huge plans to redevelop and restore this magnificent building to its former glory. We were allowed to wander around the stables, and when Philby came here, it was not animals in the stables, it was ostrich, a couple of ostrich, which must have been quite entertaining. But we spent about an hour in Shubra Palace being shown around by our wonderful hosts. We were decorated with garlands of flowers, and just spent most of yesterday and this morning visiting similar sites. Real strong Ottoman influence to the architecture here, some beautiful old palaces, and all the time this lovely backdrop of mountains, juniper trees up above, and temperatures, very, very mild temperatures here because of the altitude. But for Philby, of course, he hadn't reached Taif because Shubra Palace in 1917 was 1 mile out of the community, so he had to press on. And he wrote and thus, just before sundown on Christmas Day, we made our entry into Taif by a gap in the broken wall hard by the barracks, and in a few minutes we couched our camels at the door of a house which had been placed at our disposal. The property of Ali Effendi, Emir or director of the Shurta, who met us at the door after our dismounting. It's worth noting, of course, that at this point, we know now that we have 2 more days of travel but until we reach Jeddah. So we're going to go up and over the top of the mountains, which are around Taif, and drop down the seaward side in 48 hours time to the flat plains of Jeddah, where our journey will come to an end. But at this point in 1917, Philby arrived in Taif expecting to find someone, a British officer from Egypt, who'd been sent to meet him here. And his plan, amazingly, was to turn around and go all the way back to Riyadh with this man, and so prove to the powers that be in Cairo that actually the central desert of Arabia really was under the control of Ibn Saud. And to have to turn around and go back across what we've crossed over the last 10 or 11 days would be mind-boggling. And he had it much harder than we did. 11 and a half days in the saddle every day. 11 and a half hours in the saddle every day. Extraordinary. But he was prepared to do that. That was the plan all the way along. But much to his disappointment, when he arrived here in Taif, there was no message from Baghdad. No one had arrived from Egypt. So he was very much back to plan B, which was to plough on to Jeddah and so complete his crossing. So for us last night, it was really reading through Philby's notes on his 2 days in Taif. We found a place just on the edge of the city, tucked up into the mountains, where we camped under the tallest tree, what is reputedly the tallest tree in Taif. There were packs of fighting and squabbling dogs all around us, donkeys bleating through the night, a really heavy dew. Our sleeping bags were soaking wet this morning. Beautiful birds. If you're an ornithologist, there's a bird has appeared here at this altitude, which we find in southern Oman, and we haven't seen it anywhere else on our journey yet. It's called the Tristram's Grackle. What a great name for a Friday that is, Tristram's Grackle. Around us, our campsite, the land was being farmed. Pomegranates, the most beautiful pomegranates grow here in this climate. Roses, we've already mentioned. Grapes, lots of citrus fruit. A beautiful, beautiful place. And rightly and understandably, it's been the summer retreat for people from the plains down below in Jeddah for many, many centuries. It might be worth just ending this podcast making reference to Philby's Christmas dinner, because obviously for the last several days he's been, like us, chomping on bits of sand in everything really, in the middle of the desert. But his hospitality, the hospitality he experienced here in Taif, is exactly the same as we have. Taif has obviously changed hugely since 1917, but the one thing that hasn't changed is the hospitality, and that's been the same really from when we arrived in Al Aghair many, many weeks ago. Saudi Arabia is the most extraordinarily warm and welcoming country, and Philby wrote about that frequently. On settling down in what was to be his base in Taif for 2 days before pushing on, he said 2 great circular mats were brought in and spread upon the carpet in the middle of the hall. On each was placed a metal tray with limbs of sheep piled high on steaming rice, whose snowy whiteness contrasted strangely with the brown mess of dusty rice boiled in dirty water to which we had grown accustomed in the desert. Such was our Christmas dinner, to which we sat around, myself and my 12 comrades, and of which little was left but bare bones when we rose to wash our hands and resume our seats around the fire for coffee.